to number 10, we have socks. What could be scarier than socks, right? 17 people shared their online dating horror stories on the website Thought Catalog, and one woman messaged in about her experience with a man on the dating site OkCupid. Now this is a free-to-use dating site, and maybe you get what you pay for. She said that she matched with a guy, the conversation got going, and he messaged her to ask if she could wear some socks. He wanted to send her some. Thoughtful? Maybe. No, it actually turns out it's just really creepy. The guy asked if the woman could wear the socks for 2 to 3 months without washing them and then send them back. Like, if you're into feet, I don't necessarily judge you, like you do you, but a smelly sock. Honestly, the way a sock smells at the end of the day, let alone at the end of the month or the end of 3 months, honey, no. The girl never met up with the guy in question, but can you even imagine if they did meet?
Whew, that one's gross. Okay, in at number 9 we got plenty of nudes. When you meet someone online, there could always be the chance that you could be talking to a predator. I mean, the person is essentially anonymous, you don't know anything about them. Everyone seems normal and nice at first, but then sometimes a dark side starts to show through. A woman who goes by Georgie Rosette said that she met a guy on Plenty of Fish. They chatted for a bit and he seemed nice, so they exchanged numbers. They talked again for a few more days on WhatsApp, but the conversation fizzled out, as it often does when it comes to online dating and two people just aren't hitting it off. A couple of weeks go by and she gets a random message from him. She opens it and it's a picture of a woman's breasts. She was obviously confused, so she sent him back a question mark. He wrote back, "Send more." She had never met this man and she barely knew him, so she said no, understandably. And then things escalated. He responded, "Send me more or I'll send a picture of the boobs to everyone you know." I'm sorry, what? At first she thought he wasn't serious, so she told him to buzz off. But then he started spouting off names of all the people she's friends with on Facebook, even though she never told this man what her last name was and they weren't friends on Facebook. She was terrified and threatened to call the police, and he eventually backed off. She blocked his number and set her Facebook to private and hasn't used any online dating apps to this day. Honestly, I feel like deleting my online dating apps after hearing this one.
What an absolute creep. What would you even do? Oh my goodness. Okay, I find this so stressful. At number 8, we have the dog thief. A man used Tinder to match with a woman in Bergen County, New Jersey. An 18-year-old girl matched with a guy who showed up to meet her as she was house sitting for a friend. The teen had never met the man, who turned up to meet her with a friend of his in tow. It seemed that the second man was a surprise to the girl, but she hung out with her date anyway. Meanwhile, his friend cased the house, stole a laptop, an Amazon parcel, but worst of all, they also stole the family's beloved 2-year-old Maltese dog Maggie. Mate, you've gone too far. It seems that the date was part of a wider ruse to burgle a number of homes and dupe vulnerable women. Luckily, Maggie was later found by local town residents. Now this horror story does have a happy ending, but it could be much worse, like the rest of the stories on this list. Oof.
Yeah, or like this next story. The park masturbator. In at number 7. I've definitely had my fair share of online dating horror stories, but luckily I haven't met any sickos just yet. Knock on wood. Does anyone have some wood for me to knock on? Nope. Thank you, Chris. Our next scary online dating story comes from a woman named Ashley, who said she met a man online who wanted to go for a walk. A walk is a great idea for a first date. You get some coffee, bundle up, stroll around, admire the scenery. While Ashley was walking with her date, they stopped to admire the beautiful park, when suddenly her date started licking her face. She froze and didn't know what to do. Maybe he was just a bad kisser? Ashley said she didn't run away at this point because she was young and stupid. So she continued walking with this date. And then he licked her face again. You would think that the average person would be significantly creeped out at this point, but then, you know, we all do strange things in the name of love. Ashley and her date sat down on a bench, and she sat on the opposite side of the bench because, you know, she was afraid he was gonna lick her face again. As she was thinking of a way to escape, she heard a strange noise coming from the opposite side of the bench. She looked over and was completely shocked to see that her date was full on touching himself in a public park. Ashley says she's never run as fast as she did that day, and honestly, I don't blame her.
Honestly, I actually wish part of this video was mine and Charlotte's reactions, because my face during that was just like…
Alright, next up at number 6 we got OkCupid Machete Man. Seeing someone's place for the first time can be an exciting thing. Things are going well and the two of you are finally ready to get intimate. But a person's home tells a lot about them. Are they clean? Do they take care of themselves? Do they take out the garbage? Do they have a machete collection? A woman named Sophie downloaded OkCupid and didn't have much luck meeting anyone interesting. Until one day, she started talking to a man who she then started dating. The two of them went on several dates and one thing led to another, and he asked her if she would like to see his place. She agreed. But when she went back to her date's place, the walls were full of swords, knives, and machetes. Her date then took a machete off the wall and held it to her throat to show her just how strong and sharp it was. It's like, okay, you're collecting knives, that's not that strange. Lots of people are into weaponry, but holding one to your throat the first time you go to a guy's place? I would be afraid to walk out alive. Also, like, was she supposed to be impressed by the sharpness of his knife? Maybe the guy was a serial killer, who knows? It's safe to say that Sophie never saw her date again.
General rule for a first date, keep all pointy things away from me. All of them. Thank you. Coming into number 5, we have the honey trap. This Tinder date also turned out to be a trap. Now in January 2016, a man in Boulder, Colorado was excited to match with a woman. He was pretty pumped for their date. I mean, I guess you would be, right? As the man arrived at the agreed date location near the University of Colorado in downtown Boulder, unfortunately, instead of meeting the woman that he'd matched with, he was set upon by a man wearing a ski mask. This is never good news. The man then pulled out a gun and demanded that his date empty his pockets. The perpetrator, who is described as being between 18 and 25 and Hispanic in ethnicity, stole the Tinder date's wallet, including his cash, his cell phone, and his car keys. Now if there is a silver lining, if there is one, being honey trapped by a man, luckily the guy's car was safe. Now it does seem like this was not the first crime like this in the area. Just days before, a woman was robbed after organising a meetup with a guy on Craigslist.
Alright, coming into number 4, we've got Joyride. But this ride was definitely not joyful. A woman met a guy online and they arranged a movie date. We'll call this couple Greg and Mary. Greg and Mary ordered a pizza and started to watch the first movie. He then turned to her and said, "It's hard to be a rich man because women are whores." Mary said she was uncomfortable, so he apologized and they kept watching the movie. 5 minutes later, Greg started ranting again about the same things. Mary told him that she wanted to go home, so Greg offered to drive her. So she gets in his car and then he begins driving recklessly before she can get her seatbelt on. He hits a cement pillar and the car starts to smoke, but he keeps going. Mary is thrashed around the car, she hits the door, the windshield, and describes the experience as being like a bean in a tin can. Greg then starts saying crazy things like, "Oh, I'll get you home, but I don't know what condition you'll be in when you get there." Oh god. Meanwhile, Mary still doesn't have her seatbelt on. Then thankfully, someone pulls in front of Greg's car and he slams on the brakes. Mary hits the windshield, then somehow manages to grab the door handle, opens it, and propels herself out of the car as Greg slams on the gas. She hits the pavement, got up, and started running as fast as she could. Mary finds a parking lot and hides behind cars until Greg drives away. Unfortunately for Mary, she forgot her purse in Greg's car. She had no money and she was stranded. She calls her roommate, but her roommate doesn't pick up the phone. Mary walks a few miles and ends up flagging a cab. She convinces the cab driver to drive her to her mom's house and that she would pay him when she got there. I don't know about you guys, but like, this one made me scared to get in a car with a date. Maybe I'll insist on an Uber next time.
Okay, but I'm glad it ended that way because I seriously thought that you were gonna say that she had to call Greg and get her purse back, which, like, stay away from Greg. Get out of here, Greg. You creep. More creeps at number 3, hip hip hooray, we have the sorority snatcher. In April 2016, a college student in Kansas decided to go on a second date with the guy that she'd met on Tinder. The first date actually went well, so she agreed to see him again. However, it seemed that 30-year-old Stephen Allen was not who she thought him to be. Allen picked up the 20-year-old girl at her sorority house and abducted her. He held her against her will for 6 whole days. Now the crazed man accused the girl barely out of her teens of flirting with one of his friends. He then, as punishment, imprisoned her in his trailer for 6 days. Like, this is not okay. The man stamped on her, punched her, kicked her, and even threatened to kill himself. He eventually did return her home when she begged him to. She promised that she wouldn't call the police, but obviously she did. My question is, for Stephen Allen, a lot like Greg, what is wrong with you? Okay, this goes so far beyond what is wrong with you. Coming into number 2, we have stabbing Simpson. In November 2016, student Molly McLaren matched with a guy 3 years older than her on Tinder, Joshua Simpson. The pair both lived near Chatham in Kent in the United Kingdom, and the man ended up attacking Miss McLaren outside her gym in June of the following year. From the off, the pair did have quite a stormy relationship, as the 23-year-old found him to be pretty controlling. The pair broke up after 7 months on and off together. Molly claimed that she was no longer attracted to the guy. The pair did briefly rekindle one final time, but they fully broke up again in the middle of June. Following the breakup, Molly became really worried about her ex's behaviour, so much so that she texted her friends saying she felt like she was always looking over her shoulder. It seems that actually her paranoia was pretty well founded. Mr. Simpson had become crazed and started posting malicious statements about her online. On the 29th of June 2017, 12 days after their final breakup, Simpson stalked Molly to the gym. As she tried to escape, he cornered her with a pickaxe and a knife and stabbed her 75 times as she tried to get away in her car. Onlookers called the police, who didn't arrive in time to save Molly's life, despite one man attempting to stop him. When the police arrived, Simpson was covered in blood and arrested at the scene, thank God. It seems that he actually went on another Tinder date the night before he murdered his ex. Can you even imagine being that girl? She's so lucky she got away. Honestly, my thoughts and heart go out to Molly's family. Like, this is sick and not okay.
Whoa, that was a doozy. I actually feel bad about putting this next one at number 1, but I decided that it would be appropriate because this was a first date. That one's gonna be hard to top though, I have to admit. At number 1, we got the drug date. And this one will scare the crap out of you. A woman named Carol met a man on Tinder. They made plans to meet up. He picked her up and they went to dinner. Dinner was great. They were having an awesome time. She really liked the guy. But then Carol started feeling dizzy and nauseous. She asked her date to drive her home, and when they got there, to thank him, she invited him in for a coffee. She had started feeling a little bit better. But then when they went inside, the dizziness returned, so she asked him to leave. He agreed and left her alone. Carol went to bed, but woke up in the middle of the night because she heard sounds coming from downstairs. She called the police, who showed up and found the door locked. They broke down the door and Carol hears the police officers pinning down someone in her living room. She went downstairs and discovered that all her furniture was covered in plastic and a saw and hammer was laid out on the ground. Basically what happened was her date drugged her and then took her house keys when she asked him to leave. He went home, picked up the murder weapon and returned to her place. He then prepared her house for what seemed to be a future murder and covered her furniture in plastic. Honestly, Rebecca, I feel like I'm gonna be single forever. Like, this is all kinds of no. Like, it makes me I just want to open up to somebody. Like, god damn it.
Coming into number 10, we have the Bumble Tumble. A lot of people are afraid of dating because they think that the guy or the girl will dislike them, and also dating can be expensive. Well, with that in mind, this poor girl's Bumble date was so awful it probably put her off dating for the rest of her life. So 28-year-old Ryan Miller had a date in Huntington Beach, California in September 2018, very recently. She met a guy and she thought that, you know what, she's just gonna have a drink, they're gonna get to know each other. She sipped on 1 beer and her date, a 38-year-old named Brandon, drank 3 beers and ordered a steak. Fine. She wasn't really enjoying the date though, and at one point Brandon even asked if he was behaving like an a-hole, to which she sheepishly agreed that he was. He was being rude to the server, he was just rude. I get it, you're hungry, but do you need to order a steak while your date's just sipping on 1 drink? I don't know. Anyway, he got up to use the washroom and she pulled out her phone to text her friends. Soon though, she got a text from him that read, "Thanks for dinner, hard no, welcome to Cali, fatty." She replied saying, "Are you serious?" It turns out that actually he was. He'd left her with the check. What a real a-hole. Okay, we have some real horror from here on out. Coming in at number 9, we have 65,000 texts for her soulmate. Do you know, I'm not even sure if I believe in soulmates these days, and this stresses me out. You meet a guy or a gal on Tinder and the worst you expect is a bad date. The best, well, that's open to interpretation depending on what you're after, but hopefully another date or a series of good dates. You would hope that if the chemistry isn't felt, you can both just be respectful about that, but apparently not. In May 2018, Jacqueline Addis of Arizona was arrested for stalking and harassing a man she met online. The 31-year-old met the man on a dating website and soon started visiting his home and flooding his inbox with tens of thousands of texts. She claimed he was her soulmate.
I love him. L equals 3.3 times E equals MC squared, and that's the equation of eternal love.
When the messages started getting threatening, he called the police. One of the messages read, "Oh, what I would do with your blood, I want to bathe in it."
When you're finding love, not everything is perfect.
She was eventually arrested when she broke into his home and was found taking a bath in his tub. When questioned by police, she told them she was his wife. Another stalker after an online date. At number 8, we have a true Tinder terror. You meet a guy online and he stabs you 11 times, something he's been planning for a while. In 2017, a man was killed at the end of a 100-mile chase on Australia's east coast. Dr. Angela J had been seeing a 36-year-old Paul Lambert for 2 months, but after that time, she decided she didn't really want to further the relationship. There's a good way to take that involves respect for a human and their decision making, and well, there's the way Paul took that. Andrew had already started applying for a restraining order when Paul broke in and stabbed her 11 times. He then doused her in gasoline as she tried to escape. Now luckily, she did manage to flee and get neighbours to call for help. Police then tried to catch the fleeing maniac. Paul Lambert was shot dead after a lengthy car chase. Coming in at number 7, we have the fake singer. In 2011, David Russell from the UK pretended to be the frontman Oliver Skies from the band Bring Me the Horizon. He did this in order to lure 19-year-old Maricar Benedicto from California to Northampton. When she arrived, he took her to a forest that he said held special childhood memories, and he then slit her throat. The 20-year-old blindfolded the girl, having googled how to kill a person the day before. She jumped up after she felt the knife meet her neck, and then he stabbed her in the back several times before hitting her with a log. Miraculously, the girl did survive the ordeal and managed to escape. Now the whole situation was basically my mum's worst fear about online people come true. Clearly, people aren't always who they say they are, and the waters do get pretty murky online. Coming into number 6, we have the Tinder dissolver. Oh, this is so grim. This has some kind of Breaking Bad meets Bachelor horror story vibe, but sadly, it's the real life. 26-year-old Francia Ruth Ibarra and Emmanuel Delany Valdez began dating in October 2016 after meeting in Mexico City. These guys met on Tinder, and by Christmas, Francia was dead. The pair dated for a short while and they kept a low profile as a couple. On the 3rd of December 2016, Francia got ready for a date with her Tinder fling, not knowing it would be her last outing ever. Police found the woman's bones on Emmanuel's apartment balcony a couple of weeks after she went missing. The police were then led to believe that Emmanuel was behind the girl's murder, suspecting that he dissolved her body in hydrochloric acid. The news article I read about his arrest said that he was indifferent to his capture. Coming into number 5, we have the Seattle Sicko. It is heartbreaking the way some people have clearly abused the online dating culture to pose as someone legit and above board. I guess online dating cuts out initial first impressions. When you meet someone for the first time in real life, you can tell if they're a bit off. Anyway, poor Ingrid Lynn, a mum from Seattle, was trying to find a man to make her happy and take her out, when unfortunately she found John Robert Carlton, a man with a history of violence whose family had filed a restraining order against him in 2006. The pair met online and went on a handful of dates in early 2016. Sadly, after her ex-husband reported her missing, they found her head, arm, leg and foot in a homeowner's recycling bin. When officers arrested John, he had scratches all over his body. When he was being questioned, he said that he went to a ball game and got so drunk that when they returned to her home, he couldn't remember what happened. Officers think that he killed her in the bathtub and then chopped her up. What a gent. Coming into number 4, we have the Tinder death drop. What led to Warren Wright taking a tumble off a balcony on the Gold Coast of New Zealand in 2014? Sadly, we don't know the answer to that question, but the events unfolded after a Tinder date went horribly wrong. Warren and self-confessed ladies man Gable Toasty swiped each other on Tinder and decided to meet in real life. The date was going well. Warren ended up going back to Gable's Gold Coast apartment where they drank whilst listening to music. The pair took a selfie together, although it does look like she's pretty intoxicated. It's unclear what happened between the moments of the selfie being taken and the moment the 26-year-old woman hit the ground beneath his 14th floor apartment, but it seems the pair got into some kind of argument. pregnant. Gable made an audio recording on his phone asking Morena to leave, threatening to throw her off his balcony. From what we can determine from the recording, the woman is distressed and hysterical. Gable seemed to threaten to lock her on his balcony, and it seems anyway that Morena tried to climb down to her freedom, but instead fell to her death. Now what could have happened between them to lead to this happening? Gable was arrested for murder, but was cleared. The case was reopened in December 2016. Coming into number 3, we have the devil of dating. In July of 2018, Daniel Drayton of New Haven, Connecticut was arrested on suspicion of rape and murder. It seems that the man in his late 20s was using online dating as a way of selecting his victims. Daniel came to the attention of the NYPD when they were investigating the murder of 29-year-old Samantha Stewart in Queens, New York. Her body was discovered by her brother on July 17th of 2018. The man was also linked to a rape in Brooklyn weeks before. Later, Drayton was found holding a 28-year-old captive in Los Angeles following a date arranged online. It seems that the man had a history of violence and is now facing 23 years to life for his crimes. Coming into number 2, we have The Trap. Friends of Johnny Altinger were initially concerned about his blind date ahead of the Thanksgiving long weekend in 2008. Why? Well, the woman wouldn't give him a proper address to meet him at, instead instructing him to meet him at a back alley garage in a quiet part of Edmonton. Soon his friends were worried when he didn't show up for Thanksgiving plans. Soon they got an email, purportedly from Johnny, that read, "I've met an extraordinary woman named Jen who has offered to take me on a nice long tropical vacation. We'll be staying at her winter home in Costa Rica. Phone number to follow soon. See you guys around for the holidays. Johnny." His friends were suspicious as the email wasn't in his tone at all. Over the next week, his friends became even more concerned, so they broke into his home, where they found his passport was very much still there. This is when Johnny's boss got an email saying he was quitting. Enough was enough, and the police were called to investigate. It turns out that Johnny was lured by an amateur filmmaker who was not a woman at all, but a man named Mark Twitchell. Twitchell had written a script about a married man who uses the internet to meet a woman, but when he goes to meet her, he's attacked by a masked killer. Police believe that this is what happened to Johnny, and when his remains were discovered, unfortunately this was confirmed. Police also discovered that Twitchell had used the Plenty of Fish dating website to try and attack another man who luckily escaped with his life. Okay, this has been far too intense, so I just really want to end on something scary but funny, because sometimes the two do come together. This is one of the scariest online dating stories I've ever heard, but honestly, just one of my favourite stories ever. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the Tinder poo story. Okay, this would be terrifying if it happened to you. Luckily, all involved seem to have a good sense of humour. So I just want to paint the picture for you. Imagine this. You've got a date. You're excited. You end up meeting the person. You hit it off. You go back to their house and you talk even more, and, you know, whatever, like nature calls, and you already have to face the fear of pooping in a new place, which, for me, anxiety. But you know what? You get over it. It's just going to be a blip in your evening. You got to do your business. You've done it. You're flushing. You're getting ready to go back out to your awesome date. At this point, the worst thing on your mind is that maybe they'll smell it and you aren't ready for that kind of intimacy. But oh no, it isn't flushing. You try again and again and again and again and again, and the maddening fear takes over, and you know you just can't leave it there for your date to see and smell, so you pluck it out of the toilet and wrap it in a tissue, and you plan on throwing it away, only you realise there's no bin. Then you spot the window. Could you? Should you? What other choice do you really have right now when your poo is in your hand? You've already taken a really long time and you need to get rid of the poo, and you're now very, very, very much aware that it's, you know, still in your hand. You open the window and you throw it out, kind of disgusted with yourself, but what were you to do? At least it's over. You're washing your hands, you're breathing a sigh of uneasy relief, but then you look out of the window and oh, holy no, there is the poo caught between two panes of glass. What do you do? Panic, panic. Well, this was the real situation that Christine Lampard found herself in after a date with Liam Smith. She did Well, probably one of the bravest things in the history of bravery, and went to tell him what happened. She explained the whole thing, how it wouldn't flush, and how she threw her poo out the window. He went to investigate and, well, there was the poo stuck in a weird twilight zone of double glazing windows. Liam provided pictures to illustrate the story. It's a weird double glazing situation. The pair were gonna try and rescue the poo, agreeing that it couldn't just sit there. This was when Christine had the idea to climb out of the window and try and grab it, bring it back in, and maybe toss it in the bin in his garden. Unfortunately though, she got stuck. She got stuck face down out of a window, reaching for her own poo, and the fire brigade had to be called. They then came and rescued her, but they had to remove the window, which cost £300 to be replaced. Plus the awkward story of why she was hanging out of the window in the first place. Honestly, I can't tell you how glad I am that this wasn't me. I'd be terrified. This is the funniest / worst thing that could happen on a date ever, and hats off to the pair of them. I hope they get married and tell this story forever. Coming in at number 10, we have a Facebook employee who is using Tinder to stalk women. Recently, in May 2018, it came out that Facebook had fired an employee who'd been using his clout with the social media giants to access private information about women. He was then using that information to stalk them on Tinder and find out extra facts about them, which is pretty creepy. The Facebook security engineer used privileged access to find women. Now, a woman called Jackie Stokes shared her screenshotted exchange with the man on Tinder. Facebook were very quick to act. Coming in at number 9, we have 100 missed calls. In a Reddit thread about awful Tinder stories, a guy whose username is JoskelixTricks posted a story about a girl he matched with. After 2 weeks of messaging, they met up. He said he was excited for the date as she seemed pretty cool. They had loads in common. They exchanged numbers and Facebook details prior to meeting, and this was a big mistake. He said in person she seemed kind of off. After a short date, he made his excuses and left. Unfortunately, this was when she began bombarding him with calls and over 100 texts. She sent him a string of video messages crying, telling him that she was suicidal and that he had to come and live with her and look after her. She began messaging other people he knew even when he blocked her. Eventually, after weeks of bombardment, he managed to successfully cut her out, but it was enough to make him quit Tinder forever. Coming in at number 8, we have angry tiny anus. Sure, nobody's personal safety was threatened during this scary Tinder story, but it is still truly horrifying. In a BuzzFeed article about awful Tinder dates compiled from community responses, a BuzzFeeder wrote in about a truly awful dinner companion. Imagine going on a first date, sitting down to a lovely dinner, just snacking on your bread, having a little sip of your wine, ordering your main courses, and then hearing this. They wrote, I went on a date with a guy from Tinder, and as we were eating, he told me about his visit to the doctor that day. I listened sympathetically as he told me how he regularly produced massive stools. Due to him being a vegetarian, apparently this tore his tiny anus into shreds. Apparently he had to put cream on it. Now, needless to say, she didn't date him again. I cannot deal with talk about tiny anuses ever, but especially over dinner. What are you thinking? Seriously, even if we've been together for 10 years, I don't want to hear about your anus. It's just a steadfast rule. Coming in at number 7, we have a woman who attacked her boyfriend with a sword because she found out that he'd secretly been using Tinder. A warning to all of those of you out there using dating apps to cheat on your partners. It doesn't end well. In March 2018, a woman in Camas, Washington slashed her boyfriend with a samurai sword because he was using Tinder behind her back. 30-year-old Emily Javier stabbed her 29-year-old boyfriend Alex Lovell at their home. She then called police to say that she was worried that he was dead. It seems like the whole incident was premeditated. Now, Emily had found the dating app on Alex's phone. She'd then gone to the mall to buy the sword, then launched her attack. She was immediately regretful as to what she'd done. She called 911. Now, luckily, Alex did survive the attack. Coming into number 6, we have a Tinder rapist. In February 2018, a man was jailed for 5 years for raping a woman who he met on Tinder. 20-year-old Christian Stevenson of Hemlington, Middlesbrough, UK, was convicted of raping a woman who wished to remain anonymous. The rapist's text stream with his victim was publicised, during which he defended Donald Trump and said that rape is, and I quote, not that bad. Christian went to the victim's home on their second date and tried to sleep with her. She rebuffed his advances, but he managed to pin her down. She later texted him saying he knew that she didn't want it, but he continued anyway, to which he replied, "I know I shouldn't have." We have an unsolved murder at number 5. So we don't know whether or not the killer was definitely Tinder related, but we do know that the last thing Sydney Loof from Nebraska did was go on a date with a woman that she'd met on the dating app. 24-year-old Sydney posted how excited she was about her date on Snapchat. She posted a selfie and she used the heart eye emojis. She met 23-year-old Bailey Boswell and her phone was last pinged at her house that she shared with her roommate, Aubrey Trail, a 51-year-old male. When Sydney failed to show up to work the next day, she was reported missing. Sadly, she was found dead in a rural part of Clay County. Now, both Bailey and Aubrey were arrested but protested their innocence. Coming into number 4, we have the woman who fell off a balcony. In 2014, Warrena Wright was on a date with a guy called Gable Tosti. She'd met this guy on Tinder, it was kinda going well, she went back to Gable's Gold Coast apartment and they drank whilst listening to music. The pair took a selfie together, although she does look kind of out of it. Gable made an audio recording on his phone asking Warrena to leave. He threatened to throw her off his balcony. In the recording, the 26-year-old female sounds pretty distressed and pretty drunk. Gable seemed to threaten to lock her on his balcony, and the woman then tried to climb down to freedom, but unfortunately she fell to her death. Gable was then arrested for murder, but later cleared. Coming into number 3, we have a woman doused in gasoline. This is a horrifying Tinder tale if ever I heard one. In 2017, a man led police on a 100-mile chase on Australia's east coast after stabbing his Tinder date 11 times and dousing her in gasoline. Dr. Angela J had been seeing 36-year-old Paul Lambert for 2 months before she ended their relationship. He didn't take it well and snuck into her house as part of a plot to rape and murder her. Angela had already applied for a restraining order when Paul broke in and stabbed her legs. He then doused her in the gasoline as she tried to escape. Luckily, she managed to flee to a neighbour's house and call for help. Police tried to catch the fleeing maniac, but Paul Lambert was shot dead after a lengthy car chase. Coming into number 2, we have the sad story of a woman who was stabbed to death. 23-year-old Molly McLaren was stabbed to death by a man she met on Tinder, even after she reported him to the police. Molly from Kent in the UK met Joshua Stimpson on Tinder in November 2016. They dated for 4 months. After the woman called things off with the 26-year-old male, he struggled to accept it was over. They briefly got back together in June, but once again Molly called things off because of Joshua's demanding nature. She blocked him on social media, but he kept posting nasty things about her where he could. This led to Molly reporting him to the police. She also told her friends that she was scared of him. 12 days after their relationship ended in June 2017, Joshua stabbed Molly 75 times in her car in what was described as a frenzied attack. Joshua was arrested at the scene. Now it seems that Joshua actually went on another Tinder date the night before Molly's murder. Finally, coming into number 1, one of the most gruesome Tinder stories I've ever heard, we have a woman whose body was dissolved in acid after a Tinder date. In 2016 in Mexico City, Francia Ruth Ibarra began dating Emmanuel Delaney Valdez Bocagares, both of whom were 26 years old. The pair dated for a short while, with their last date ending in Francia's murder. On the 3rd of December 2016, Francia got ready for her date, not knowing that it would be her last ever. Police believe that the woman may have turned down Emmanuel's advances, but they can't know for sure. What they do know is that she was murdered and her body was dissolved in hydrochloric acid. Her bones were then left out on his apartment's balcony. Reportedly, the man was emotionless upon his arrest.